Hey everyone, welcome back to the arena. I'm MD, joined here by Covey and another awesome guest that we can't wait to get into. Once again, love and appreciation to those who continue to show love and appreciation back.
What's going on, guys? Which I'm really excited for, another in-person guest here. This is Ameer Barbour. We both went to school with Ameer. Ameer was in our fraternity as well. I wasn't super close with Ameer, but we've reconnected post-college. I think we share a lot of same values, interests. And Ameer is a chemical engineer, chemical engineering at U of I, and now is an online fitness coach, puts out a bunch of educational content around fitness and health. And really just go give him a follow for sure. We'll drop his social media stuff, all his pages, and in the description of this episode. But in any event, Ameer, why don't you spread a background? Who is Ameer Barbour? How did you get to where you are today? And why do you do what you do?
Sure. So who am I? Well, I guess I can give like the resume answer. So I've been into fitness since eighth grade. So a long time ago. Wrestled in high school, and then ultimately pursued chemical engineering in college. Went to University of Illinois. And now, after graduating, I really started paying close attention to what gave me a sense of fulfillment. And now I put out just educational fitness content, and I do online coaching as well.
Why do you take it up? Why did you take this up? Like, why did you feel like this is something I have to do? Because it's one thing to work out, it's one thing to become a personal trainer, it's another to take the time to edit videos, to put out daily information and content. Like, why did you choose that path? Why do you do what you do?
So I guess it's a long-winded story, but I can kind of cut to the chase. So I was getting really, really into fitness, and I've been really into fitness my whole life, and I've had a lot of close friends ask me for advice, and suddenly it turned into friends of friends asking me for advice, and random people asking me for advice. So I figured a good way to kind of blanket cover all of the questions I got, and all of the knowledge I've accrued would be to, disseminate it via videos online. And I guess another reason that I got into it was because, just scrolling through social media, like the fitness niche on in short form content and just content in general, there's just a ton of misinformation, and I truly felt bad for people who've tried time and time again to use this to get results. So I just kind of wanted to put my voice out there and my piece out there from kind of a science-based background, and kind of just I'd like to think that I cut out the BS and give the facts straight up, even if it's not flashy. So that's I guess why I decided to get into
And then you mentioned you started working out in eighth grade. That's very early. And why did you start working out? Because for me, I think I started maybe junior-ish year of high school, and I think it was more from a place of insecurity and wanting to feel tough and wanting to look good and wanting people to respect me more, build a little bit of confidence in myself. What was it for you, especially at such an early age, that kind of got you going there?
Oh yeah, I was skinny, fat, chunky, had buck teeth. It was. I was definitely. I wouldn't say it was all rooted in insecurity, but a large portion of it was. I was tired of feeling, and it's not like I got excessively bullied or anything, but I was tired of feeling insecure about my appearance. That was one kind of part of it. It was on the smaller side, but it was still very important. But another big portion of it was I wanted to wrestle in high school. I kind of wanted to follow my older brother's footsteps because he'd wrestled, and I wanted to get big and strong for it. And I think he probably sparked my my interest in fitness from that standpoint. So it was a means to an end to get bigger and stronger for wrestling.
Well, I think what's interesting about your story in terms of when you started to create content, I remember your actual first post, which was, I think, a story on Instagram saying something along the lines of hey, I'm getting a lot of questions. I love you, but I don't have time to answer everyone's individual content questions, so I'm just going to start to create content. But it's so interesting when you think about chicken and the egg, where your credibility, the people were coming to you with questions, because of what you were putting out just in your physical form. Like you weren't already creating content. You didn't get into that space to try and, build clout or even to try and monetize perhaps. Maybe now that's down the road. But it's just so interesting to see such a genuine, organic start to that. And you mentioned the word fulfillment through that. Did you find fulfillment once you started, or did you know that, was it more of an observation of the space, the flaws you saw in it? I'm going to enter into that space, debunk a lot of it, and through that there's the fulfillment. Or was it more of, oh wow, now that I'm doing this and I'm helping people, I'm feeling fulfilled?
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions there. We could circle back around to where if I skipped over one, but yeah, no, it's kind of funny. It was only about a year ago that I posted just a Snapchat story like, "Hey guys, I have a lot of you guys asking me questions about fitness," and yeah, I wasn't putting out content, and I was like, "I love you all, but I don't have time to go through and give you individualized advice based on where you're at and what in your journey and everything, but I'm going to start posting short form content. I'm going to make an Instagram, and if you'd like to follow, please give me a follow." So yeah, that's how it all started. And I feel like so there's two sides to this, right? There's that, right? Helping, so like the service to others and just helping people who wanted the advice from me. Then I guess there was like the debunking side of it. And I think the vast majority of the fulfillment comes from just knowing that I put out good information for others and that I actively help others. The debunking thing, I feel like it's something that's necessary to be done sometimes, to like call out like, yo, this is total BS, just to kind of clear up and hopefully, nudge the fitness industry in the right direction just a tiny bit. But ultimately it doesn't feel that great. Like I don't get like a deep sense of like, oh yeah, this is my mission to talk crap about other people's content. It's mostly just knowing that, I think most of the fulfillment comes from just knowing that I'm putting out good content, period, and then just getting feedback from people who are open and accepting of that content and are like open to accept it.
How has this helped you shape a sense of purpose, and maybe how has that purpose evolved? Like, I guess the question is, before you were starting, you were kind of just doing your own thing, and then you started to receive the questions. What was maybe your sense of purpose in life then versus what it might feel like now? Has it evolved?
Definitely. So my sense of purpose before was more or less lacking. Like I played the games of life before that. Like in high school, get good grades so you can go to a good college. In college, get good grades so you can go get a good job. And I went and got a good job, and then I was like, well, what's next? Right? Like, what's next? So I was searching for purpose, and it's a very lofty goal. Like, what's your sense of purpose? But I feel like generally the way I've kind of found that sense of purpose was I broke it down, and I was really hungry for it, but I kind of broke it down into a few things, and I'm not sure where I heard this, but so I think at the intersection of what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and what you can make money with, and what you can serve others, or what you can make money with, and what you can serve others with. I think at the intersection of those four things is like a purpose that you should go all in on, right? So that's essentially kind of like I was in a search phase for a while, and kind of fleshing out different paths, and I just loved fitness. I'm passionate about it. I like it. People are already reaching out to me about it, and I've gathered all this knowledge. So
you're good at it.
I'd like to think so.
We just got a great lift in before this. You put us through the ringer a little bit.
Can't feel my arms.
But yeah, so ultimately it evolved into a sense of purpose.
Did you ever feel like, was there ever a point in your life where you kind of took a step back and you were like, why am I doing this? Did you ever feel like you were people pleasing or you weren't living true to yourself? And did you have to be honest with yourself, like, what am I doing here? Or am I really staying true to myself by doing this? Am I trying to fit in? Was there ever a point in your life where you felt like you were trying to mold yourself into someone maybe that you weren't? Like, I think for myself, being in a fraternity, like, it came with a ton of positives, and like I had some of the best times of my life, but I think I was ultimately trying to be someone that I really wasn't. And so I'm just curious if you've always kind of been on maybe the right path, and you've always kind of lived true to who you are, or if there's ever a point in your life where maybe you didn't.
So I mentioned this earlier about like playing the game of life.
That's why I asked.
Right. So I think I generally dedicated myself towards winning whatever game that was, or being on like the positive end of it, right? So like with school, like I did well in school, and applied myself for that. But I wouldn't say it was so much I was trying to fit in, rather I felt like I was applying myself towards a goal that didn't ultimately mean the most to me. It wasn't a self-assigned goal. It was
a conditioned goal, like society, go get the good job, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I would say like that was my main motivator of taking action, up to the point in life when I finally did the thing. Like I went and I got the job and started making money, and I was like, okay, well, like what's next? Like this can't be it, right? And the game of life, like once you get out into the real world, you realize that you get to make your own rules, right? So once I got to make my own rules, I feel like I stepped into kind of an environment where I consistently set the rules so that I get to become the version of myself that I want to be.
So it was almost like, yeah, it does. It was almost like, maybe not to this effect, like for myself, but I definitely felt like there was a point in my life where life was happening to me, and I was going through the motions based on what I was told I should be doing with my life. And maybe not to that dramatic, but it sounds like that was maybe something for you a little bit, like go get good grades, go get a good degree, and go get a good job that pays you a lot of money. And now it sounds like you've taken life, with your hands, and you're creating the life that you want to live. Is that accurate? Do you feel that? Because I genuinely can feel that in my heart now, where it's like life was happening to me, and now I am recreating the life that I think was always meant for me, but I was just so conditioned to believe that I was supposed to live and grow up and do things a certain way.
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm living life by my rules now. I spend my time exactly how I want to, working on what I want to, and none of what I don't. So, yeah, I would say I agree with that. I identify with that kind of path.
Yeah.
I want to go into, as you started to enter like the online coaching scene, more so on the content creation side, it came from a place of like, let me help people that are reaching out to me, which is a much smaller circle than what is now your followership. I would consider you viral. There's thousands of people that now view your content. Was going viral ever a goal, or did that kind of just come with it? And then the other question is like, what else comes with that? Because I know that there's always going to be the naysayers, the critics. A lot of, the name of our show is when you step into that arena like you did, you're going to get a lot of negative feedback, a lot of hate. Talk through some of the challenges that you've been met with as you've entered the content creation space to the extent that you have.
Sure. So when I got into it, and this was before I ever made a video, knew the first thing about making a video, nothing. I made a decision, a pact with myself, like, I am going to do this consistently for 1 year, and only after that 1 year will I decide if I could stop or keep going, right? So going viral really wasn't in the plan. Definitely not in the plan. I was not a person, like on my personal Instagram, I post like once a year. Like I'm not a social media person, and I didn't think I was either. But I kind of agreed with myself, like, yeah, I'm going to do this for a year, and then I'll allow myself to not do it anymore if I want to. And I was lucky enough, I gained traction kind of off the bat with my videos.
Why do you think that was?
That's a good question. We're going to have to ask the audience.
I think we know the answer. I think we're thinking the same answer if we both took a stab at it. But
I actually hadn't thought of an answer yet. I was generally asking the question because people often get asked that question. Why do you think you went viral, and I think most of the time the answer is because I'm being honest and authentic.
That was exactly it. Yeah.
You're not putting on a facade. You're not living. You're not trying to be someone you're not, and people can feel that. Like that energy is powerful. Like that purposeful energy of someone that's just being themselves. And I think, from what I've seen, like I feel that from your content, and I'm sure that's what a lot of your followers felt as well.
Well, let me just chime in as well. It's just, Ameer, like I think we learned a lot just getting one lift in with you. You know, I was listening. If no one's ever told you this, if you haven't learned this yourself, let us, have you learn one thing. I think your authenticity is an absolute power, strength of yours. I think that to me, as soon as Covey asked, like, why do you think you went viral so fast? I think it's, again, the authentic genesis of why you got into the space to begin with. But yeah, your authenticity is absolutely a strength. Is that something that you've realized? Is that something you've talked about or started to look into?
I think self-analysis and trying to pick apart why where that would come from, or just honestly taking a good hard look at yourself is incredibly difficult. So I'd like to think I'm authentic, but everyone has different dialogues in their head based on am I qualified enough to do this? Am I not? Mm-hmm. Am I being authentic? Am I doing this for views? Right? So it really does mean a lot coming from you guys, and I hope my following feels the same, and I try living up to that standard. So,
and then in terms of one of his questions, just with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
How do you deal with whatever the amount of followers you have, 80,000 plus, whatever it might be now? I'm probably lowballing you, but just general challenges as well. What comes with being in that arena? Do you deal with any negative feedback? How do you deal with it? Do you pay any attention to it? Do you respond to it? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So first I'll go to the positive side of it, then I'll say the negative side of it. So on the positive side of it, it's motivated me to try being as right as possible. Knowing that I have this platform now of this many people listening to me, it motivates me to double and triple check everything I post and thoroughly research it, right? So I would say that's the positive side of it. And that's the overwhelming motivation for that is, to give good information to my following, but also I will say a small extent of that is from negative feedback. I don't want to open myself up to this guy's totally wrong and this is a bunch of BS, right? So there's something positive to be taken from the negative, right? But yeah, no, and here's my take on just criticism, hate in general. Anybody who's ever done anything worthwhile has amassed a ton of haters, and that's just part of the journey to being successful. You're gonna have people talk crap about you, even if you have the best intentions, even if you really are putting out good stuff, or no matter what your field is. People are going to hate you because of it, and that's it. And maybe not hate you, but you'll get
try to bring you down.
Yeah.
Did you ever let that get to you, or have you always been very level-headed of this just comes with the territory?
Oh yeah, I'm human. It's gotten to me, and especially in the beginning, like I said, going viral was never a plan, right? And with that, I went from maybe 2 comments on a post to sometimes hundreds.
Do you read them all?
I try to, and I try to respond to every single person. So, but I do read them all, and when I was acclimating to that, you can get 50 good comments, and then all it takes is 2 really rude ones,
to have you question yourself,
and maybe not even question yourself, but rile yourself up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can get all these, thank you, this solved my shoulder pain, or whatever, oh, this lift wrecked my triceps, whatever. And then it'd be one person will just say some negative comment, and I'm thinking of all the reasons they're wrong, and initially it pissed me off to some extent. But after a while, and after I realized no matter how good I get or how perfect the information is or whatever, there's going to be people posting negative stuff. And that's just what comes with the territory. And that's okay.
And I see that you respond to your comments, positive or negative. And I do see that you do respond. I don't want to say retaliate, but you respond to your negative comments. Whether it's have a good day or whether it's more information to continue to build your credibility and maybe have a civil debate. Have you had an opportunity to kind of take a step back and reflect and say, I need to find a sustainable way to not let these things rile me up, but I need to find a sustainable way to maintain dialogue because I know that's important to you, is like, I'm going to debate because that public debate can help people still, but I need to find a way to also set a boundary and build space for myself so that I'm not having, high blood pressure every time I see these things. Have you started to think about how to sustain that as you continue to grow your brand?
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the boundary I've set. If I post let's say I have a scientific post with studies referenced and whatnot, and if I think the criteria for me to respond to like a negative comment, if it's just like, this dude's small, what? Like, okay, like, cool. Like, I try not feeding into that. But what I do feed it, I try not to. Sometimes I'm like, you're stupid. And I've said that before, sometimes, I'm a human. Sometimes I could be petty. Right. But I think the criteria for me to like actively respond to a comment and have dialogue is, and I think this is almost the most dangerous type of person on social media, when they sound just smart enough to get other people to believe them. They're using big words. It sounds like their line of reasoning could be correct, and then they're saying, like, kind of crappy information, like contrary to what I'm saying. And then I will respond, and if it gets a lot of likes, right, or if people are seeing it, I'll respond and be like, no, this is the reason that, X, Y, and Z, this is why I believe that. Here are the reference studies. You can go through and read them yourself, right, and make your own decision based on that. But I think, and the reason I respond to those comments is because it's dangerous when they sound just intelligent enough, and are using intelligent enough, lines of logic to
sway the average person that doesn't have that background or doesn't understand what they're referencing.
Exactly. It sounds like it makes sense,
Yeah.
So I have to be like, this is the reason that it doesn't make sense. Right.
So you have, we on our walk back from the gym, you sounded, not to say riled up, but you're passionate about just like general fads of the fitness industry, misconceptions. Like what are just some of the biggest misconceptions around fitness, around broader health and wellness that the average person listening to this could benefit from hearing?
Oh man, I wouldn't even know where to start with that. If you want to take like a first principles approach, like resistance training and strength training is, paramount to just health and longevity in every form of health. But I mean, and if you go to nutrition, I think that's where the conversation was happening, really, around nutrition. And you have and I mean, I don't want to harp on this. Everyone's dunked on this dude already, but Liver King, his, and that's just a microcosm of what's happening on a large scale. And there's a lot of people who are actually more credible than him just spewing nonsense for followers. So I think that's where, I would kind of... So taking it back to first principles, there's no superfoods for testosterone or health or fat loss. It's not about an individual food. Really what it comes down to on the nutrition side is, this is where most of, the benefit's going to come from: controlling your caloric intake and hitting an adequate protein goal. And then, resistance training with semi-intelligent programming. If you hit those three things, then, you're in the winning column, right? And it doesn't need to be... And, if you have those three things checked off, then go dive into the nuances, right? But get those three things down pat first, then worry about, whether, this brand of blueberries is going to give you cancer.
Yeah.
People aren't getting cancer from blueberries, I don't know. So, yeah, I guess, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. And then in terms of when you get someone that reaches out, they want you to coach them, what do you hear from general people that want to come to you? Is it are they trying to come to you because they're insecure and they want to get in shape? Are they already, you know, I would say elite, but like, do they already have that kind of baseline, you know, fitness level? They work out, but they want to like go to that next level. Like, what stages does it really vary in terms of when people are coming to you? And I'm just curious, like, how much of it is out of maybe just a lack of self-esteem and just insecurity or lack of confidence? Like, I'm just curious, like, your
or
client
general
base.
confusion
Yeah.
at this point because of how convoluted that space is.
Yeah. I would say I've had people come to me from all walks of, you know, life. I've had people come to me that were advanced lifters that knew absolutely nothing, that have, you know, trained, you know, in like CrossFit, just like all different levels. And I think a lot of the reason that people reach out to me is because I take like, you know, a foundational scientific approach to training, and like I cut out all of like, you know, the unnecessary nuance unless they're asking for it and they're advanced. But like I give them the basic facts so they can tune out all of the noise in the industry and then, you know, build off of that, right? So I mean, when people reach out to me, I think they're looking for an educational experience. So yeah, I think they're confused. As far as self-esteem issues, confidence issues, I would have to assume that some of it comes from there. Yeah, everyone wants to look better. Everyone wants to look good. But I don't dive into that too much.
And is that, so I assume then that that's not really what they lead with? Like when they come to you, like, hey, I'm just insecure, or I'm lacking self-esteem, I want to look better, that kind of thing. I'm assuming, so you're saying they don't generally lead with that?
Yeah, I think that manifests into I want to lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's something that most people are reserved about, especially talking to some stranger, like right off the bat. Like they don't want to be like, oh, I have self-esteem issues, I want to get into shape. Some people
So
might.
if you peeled back the onion a little bit, then you would find out kind of what their actual, like, what's driving them to do it.
Yeah, I think it's probably a root cause, right? And a lot of people just want to be healthier. A lot of people want to live a longer life, stay around to see their grandkids, all of that.
Do you probe into that? Like, do you probe into and try to coach on motive? Because I think there are unhealthy motives versus I think there are healthy and I guess correct motives was a weird way to put it. But like when you see somebody who's maybe overly insecure and that's why they want to lose 20 pounds, like, do you help them realize that maybe insecurity is not as good of a motive as just I want to be healthy?
So I think just like they come to me with a layer of like, I want to lose the 20 pounds, maybe the layer back is insecurity. I present them a solution with a layer over it. So if it's like, I want to lose 20 pounds, I adjust the goals that they want to set. Like, chances are if someone comes to me and wants to lose 20 pounds, I'll be like, okay, you don't have 20 pounds to lose. We want to build up. Maybe we can lose 5 to 10 pounds. Honestly, we don't care about weight. But that's like a conversation that happens over time because they think that's what they need to lose 20 pounds or to lose just any amount of weight or any, like, I need to hit this amount on bench press or I need to do this. And it's a conversation that happens where I try managing their expectations of the goals. And a lot of them, since a lot of them do come to me confused, don't know what their goals should be. So it's a conversation of, okay, how should we, you know, set up your plan for a sustainable goal that's actually healthier for you in the long term, as compared to some arbitrary goal that someone who doesn't know much about fitness set. Right.
Maybe talk about a little bit about goal setting, both for your clients, how you do it, how the process works, and then also for yourself. Do you set goals for yourself? How do you come to said goal? What's the process like for Ameer?
So, goal setting is very dependent on the person. So I guess I could start with myself. The way I set goals is I like to set goals with the time frame of years in mind. I don't think about weeks or months, I think about years. And I feel like that's a valuable lesson to take away that, you know, I've learned is that when you can lengthen the time frame on which you can put in work towards a goal and not necessarily achieve it, like without any measurable outcome, right? That's when you'll achieve whatever you want to, right? Like if you're willing to put in the work and not see anything out till a later date, right? So some people, their time frame for that is weeks, right? And that's why a lot of people fall off their diets, right? Because they think 3-4 weeks and then they're going to get to where they want to go. Then some people can think on the order of months, where, you know, like they can diet and train for 6 months, and then you start seeing more goals, you see more progress, right? But if you're thinking on the timeline of years, right, and you can put in all that work in the meantime and not see like the final outcome you want till then, that's when you're going to get the best outcome and whatever outcome you want. So my goal is with myself to think on the order of years, but to get my clients to also think on the order of years. And realistically, I don't believe my clients will be with me for 5 to 10 years. My goal is to equip them with the knowledge so that they can take their journey 5 to 10 years. But in the meantime, letting them know and managing their expectations that, hey, this is going to take a long time. This isn't an overnight process. We're doing everything we can, and we're taking the most efficient approach, and that's what I'm here for. But this isn't an overnight process. And I make that very clear off the bat with my clients, right?
Which is super important because you talked about it in our conversation earlier today, which is, you know, just in the idea of muscle growth, but maybe in a lot of things for accomplishment or progress, it takes time, requires so much patience. And so I think that's such an important place to start is, you know, when we were just setting in the goal phase, like this is going to take a long amount of time. And what you do in between now and then in that time will ultimately be what the results are.
And I think you're also kind of you're indirectly creating discipline in your clients by setting those longer term goals, because it's requiring not only to be, you know, sticking to your diet for a week or a month or 3 months, but sticking to it for a year. That creates discipline, and that creates habits. Like habits take whatever they say 3 months to create. Like you're helping people create habits that they don't even realize are happening, I think. Mm-hmm. And I think like just another question for you is like, what are your goals? What were your goals maybe at the start of 2023? Are you tracking to them? What are your goals for the future? Like what do you want your future to look like? And like have you hit your goals this year?
So I didn't set my goals on the calendar year.
Yeah.
I think so. This previous August, so
New Year's resolution.
Right. I just happened to a year and 1 month ago at this point set out on like my like content creation journey and be like, okay.
Oh yeah, that was one, right?
Right.
Do
so
it for a year.
So I'm at the year and a month point right now, and I'm like, okay, I decide I want to keep doing this. So I guess for the next year, I just want to massively increase the quality of my content and really like take a step back, focus on putting out the most comprehensive videos I can, and just overall just giving the best information I can to the people. And that's my goal for this next year, and we'll see where it takes me.
Yeah.
Have you started to feel, you know, when you started this was, I have a full-time job and my chemical engineering degree. I'm kind of picking up this content creation off the side of my desk. This is only growing and becoming heavier to keep up with. And so I'm just curious, like, how have you started to think about uplifting both weights and like, what is like the long-term vision with that?
So I think my goal in the meantime, I kind of want to just take things 1 year at a time and assess at the end of the year. So right now, I mean, I do love my current job and I do love training, right? So I just want to stay open to opportunities, but also go all in on just maximizing the quality. Not necessarily the quantity, so that takes a little bit of weight off, but I just want to, whenever I drop a video, for that video to be a masterpiece. That's the ultimate goal, right? So I guess I want to just keep doing that in the meantime and then reassess when I get to the next year mark. I think taking things 1 year at a time is kind of, I think that's going to serve me well.
Have you had, because you said you weren't big into social media, as you've started to be on Instagram more, you're posting more content, you're on your phone more, have you found it, like, have you found it harder to log off? Have you found yourself endlessly scrolling as a result? Like, how have you dealt with like social media being such a big part of what you do, and really the the building block of like getting your content out to the world for your followers to see and learn? How have you balanced that with like yourself? Because I know it's something like I'm actively working for, is like social media is a big part of, you know, Men in the Arena and putting out content every day for the podcast, and I can find myself just getting in a rabbit hole. And so I'm just curious, genuinely for myself, like how you've dealt with it.
You know, it's been a journey of ups and downs, because like with, you know, with content and with putting it out, like you have to respond to your comments, and you have to, you know, kind of check on the progress of things, constantly be posting. And, you know, like it makes it hard to just delete the app like I used to and be like, I don't care anymore, I'm off, right? And there is kind of like a, you know, I guess like a drawback is with short form content creation is like in any content creation, really, you have to stay on the ball. You can't disappear for weeks or months at a time. Like it's a week in, week out thing. So that's definitely been tough. Trying to segment the workout, like, so maybe I'll make like
In 10 in one day or something like
yeah,
that.
like try my best, and that's really hard for me to do. But I'll try to make batches and then just put them out. And like when I'm not working on that, I just try when I'm on social media to remind myself that I want to be a creator and not necessarily a consumer, right? And that's like an active, you know, I think I have to actively reinforce and remind myself, because when I'm posting all these videos, it's like, okay, I posted it, and then like you're on the app, scroll, right? Like, and you're like 15 minutes, like, what am I doing? What did I just look at?
Yeah.
Right? And then, you know, you close out the app and you're like, oh, and I think this is where the part of content creation is annoying, because you have to check on how it's doing and respond to comments and all of that. So you have to open up the app again. So it's like a stepping stone in terms of, you know, to the doom scroll.
Right.
So I guess what I've been doing more lately is just like having all of my drafts drafted up and just consciously, like very consciously going in there, posting, and get out as soon as you can, right? And then I'll check on it a few hours later. But no, it's definitely a balance to be struck. It's tough, especially when you're at the point where like I'm at. It's like I'm making all of my own content. I'm posting it. I'm checking up on it. I'm responding on everything. Like it's all me. I think eventually the goal would be to have like some kind of team running that. Not anytime in the future, because I want like autonomy over how I can like curate my content. But eventually I kind of want to stray away from like, you know, just like clicking the post buttons and, you know, checking on things and whatnot. So, but right now I'm just dealing with it as best as I can.
Yeah.
I think patience has tended to really serve you well, whether it's, you know, setting a goal around creating content, whether it's what you preach in terms of results physically. As your followership grows, it's almost like a video game, seeing the high score go up and wanting more, and like you said, you have to stay on the ball. Have you felt like your followership wanting more and more and growing your followership, have you felt like a tug to speed you up? How have you recentered yourself or reconnected with present and staying true to your patient mindset? Are there any kind of self-care or anything that you do behind the scenes that has been important and helpful for you to not get caught up in the noise and the factors that might want to speed you up?
Yeah, so I guess I could tell a story to kind of, you know, wrap this whole thing up. So initially with my social media journey, I experienced like a lot of success very early on. I don't know what the numbers were, but I think I like got up to like 40,000-ish followers, and it was rapidly and like off maybe like 10 total posts, like wild. But then for months and months, and I just kept like improving the quality and was like, okay, I gotta keep going. Then over the next few months, I just kept losing followers. And you're right, it's like a video game, right? Like it's a high score, and you're like, oh, I'm not at my high score, right? So initially, I was like, why is this happening? Am I not putting out good stuff? Like, what's going on here? And it actually affected me to an extent. Not like it was necessarily ruining my days, but I felt kind of upset with the whole thing. and not necessarily upset. I felt it left a bad taste in my mouth. And then I realized, like, hey, this is going to happen. And if anything, if people are unfollowing me, then that's just making more room for the people who actually care. And I can't control whether people unfollow me or not. If they don't want to follow me, so be it.
And you didn't start it to go viral.
Yeah, and I had to remind myself that, because when you see every time you open up your phone like 100 new followers, it messes with your dopamine receptors, especially if you're not acclimated to that. But after a while, I was like, you know what? Like, I didn't get into this for the numbers. I don't care about the numbers. What do I care about? The quality of the content. So I just put my head down and I just kept focusing on how can I make the content better? How can I make the content better? That's it. And eventually, like, another growth spurt happened. Ironically, a few weeks after I stopped caring at all about like what the numbers were. So that's kind of like how I'm going forward with my whole journey. Like, I don't care about the numbers like at all. All I want to do is just make the best content I can, and at the end of the day, that's what people are following for. So if I maximize that, then I think good things will follow. And if I just bring myself back to the root cause of why I did this all was just to help people. So like, it's wild to think that like right now, like when I put out a piece of content, like it's speaking to like a football stadium packed to the brim, right? Like, it's wild to think about that in person. And I think that's kind of another thing maybe small content creators can take from this. If your things get 200-300 views, that's a ton of people. Like, think about a room of 200-300 people, right? Like, you can make a significant impact with whatever you have to say. So I just remind myself, like, it's just a number on a screen, and what really matters is the impact and the quality.
That's such an important like lesson of life, you know, when you start to use external measurements or metrics to really evaluate yourself, you start to lose sight of your why, and you start to attach yourself to the ebbs and flows of those metrics, and it's going to mess with your mental state and whatnot. But sounds like reconnecting with your why, staying true to that authentic self and your reason for starting this is what generated that upswing. And I just think there's so much application of that to life where it's just, if you start to get caught up in the pressures externally and you lose sight of that why, it just that in of its own is what then continues to cause a downward spiral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we just had someone on that we posted content for, and we don't get a ton of views on most of our stuff. I mean, we get a fair, when you put it the way you did, like we get more than what you 200-300 people, and like that's a fair amount of people that are watching this stuff. But we had someone on that has a big following, and she kind of like collaborated, so like our post got posted to her page, and all of a sudden we've got a reel that's got 100,000 people viewing it and 5,000 people liking it, and it's just like overwhelming. You're like, wow, this is so cool. Like you get up, you know, like your phone's just blowing up, and then the next week you post, you know, like you would your new guest, and they get 7 likes, and it's like it kind of just for me, it humbled me a little bit. It's like, okay, I didn't really feel any different when we had all these likes. Like, yeah, all these people that I don't even know who they are liking the content. That's great. I'm so glad that our content is being seen by this many people. Hopefully it's helping a bunch of people that way. But it just helped me reground myself with why we do what we do, which is to help people. It's not for the views. It's not for the likes and the dopamine hit that comes with it. It's to get the message out there to a broad scale of people that can hopefully help them in some way with their mental health journey or whatever it is they might be going through. So it was a really good message, and one that I really resonated with is like for our first time, like quote unquote, a few videos went viral from our standards.
And like you and I had a conversation recently where you had just recently done an interview off to the side, and I had told you, you know, if you stop one person from hurting themselves, right? And I think that was part of our purpose with Men in the Arena was like, we have great conversations, and if this can help one person, our purpose is served. That's a tongue twister. If you can help one person, our purpose is served. And I think you and I we have a responsibility to continue to reconnect with that why, reconnect with why we started this thing, regardless of, you know, where it goes in terms of the amount of negative noise, the amount of viewership, etc. So that, yeah, that's just such a cool message, such a cool message overall.
I mean, to summarize it, maybe a different perspective is like your why is your North Star. Like you're going to take a lot of different turns on your journey. Some are going to be through bad areas. Some are going to be the best times of your life. But always reorienting yourself to the why and to the purpose of it, I feel like ultimately will get you directionally correct and reach.
You'll go farther than you otherwise would if by following a fad or following maybe there's one guest but they don't align with your values at all, and you get a bunch of followers that way or whatever it might be, but then you don't feel true to yourself, and if you continue to do that, then you lose sight of who you are and you're not even being authentic to why you started it, and I think that can create a very downward spiral because then you're always chasing something. You just mentioned following your North Star. Like, what is your North Star? Like, what is your why?
I guess, I mean, I feel like it may be repeating myself from earlier, but just to help as many people as I can.
So it's to serve, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a key aspect of, happiness, I'd say. I'd say there's a lot of happiness to be gained from serving others and giving to others.
Absolutely.
Right, so, and I feel like when it's not just about you, that's when you're able to step your best foot forward, right? Because you're not just letting yourself down, you're letting everyone else down if you fall, right? Or not if you fall, but if you just decide to not try anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of themes. I think one, you getting into social media is outside of your comfort zone, if you will, right? And through that, it seems like you've grown a ton, whether it's your own self-esteem because now you're dealing with broad hate, if you will, and how do I, grow resilience through that. Things that might speed you up, how do I grow my ability to stay patient and true to myself, right? What else have you learned, or how else do you feel you've grown just in the last year or so, taking that huge step outside of your comfort zone that maybe isn't so obvious for somebody in your shoes?
There's a lot of lessons that were learned, and I'm trying to figure out and distill it into some of the more important ones. I guess a lesson I've learned over the past couple of years, and I feel like this ultimately led me into content creation and finding my purpose and finding my why, but I made a move to Kansas City, somewhere where I knew no one, for work, and it's really started from the ground up in terms of friends, didn't know a single person, didn't know the area. I just packed my car, got the job offer, packed my car, lived there next month. I signed a lease online and did it. But with being that alone came a great sense of responsibility in terms of what I chose to do. Because all of a sudden there were no external sources or external forces pulling me this way or pulling me that way. It's like, oh, there's this party to go to, or we have this obligation. All of a sudden it was just me, right? And no one would know what I was doing, no one cared where I was, and really the way I viewed it was like, wow, so every single thing I'm doing at every single moment of the day is only because I chose to do so. Mm-hmm. Right? So once I felt the weight of that responsibility, it's like, it's not anyone else's fault, it's your fault. And it took me moving to like Kansas City and being alone to see that, but really it's true for everyone. Like, you have the power to make your own decisions at all times. But with that kind of sense of responsibility, I really started paying close attention to what brought me happiness and a sense of fulfillment, and like really just check in with myself and not just and really take stock of like, okay, did I think this thing was going to make me happy and then it actually didn't, or did this thing make me feel happy and fulfilled? Like, let's say like partying or clubbing or whatever, it's like at a time that may have been fun, but then you kind of like, then you assess it and you're like, this didn't make me feel happy or fulfilled. And then so I got directionally way away from that. And then, oh, but this gym thing feels great. Like, I love this and I've always loved it. I'm going to double down on that. And I think just twisting and turning and doubling down on things and really analyzing them and taking stock of everything I did and doubling down on the things that I feel like just gut feeling felt right to me, kind of led me down this path. So I think it's like the lesson to be extracted from that is pay close attention to what you're doing, and and follow your gut in terms of if you feel like this activity served you well as a person and made you feel happy and fulfilled, not a fleeting sense of happiness, right? Take stock of those activities and double down on those.
Follow your heart.
Yeah. And that's so true, because, and I'm going through this now, in another way you can think about it versus moving somewhere where there are no external influences. Another way you can do that, you can insulate yourself by setting boundaries, and I think I've just started to do that, and I'm 28 years old, and within the last year, I've learned what it means to actually set boundaries and say no and do things only that you want to do, which I've never heard is like a sense of responsibility now that you've set those boundaries, or now that you've moved away from all external influences. There's just so many examples where, whatever was going on in this texting group chat that I'm in, well, that's what I'm spending my time doing in the weekend. I didn't make that decision for myself. I felt pulled into that. Why we got into corporate jobs, right? That wasn't necessarily our choice. It was the game of life and our external influences telling us. Simple example. I used to live with Covey. Now I live alone. I realized I was very diligent about putting the dishes in the dishwasher right away, not because I was super disciplined and had the responsibility, responsibility, but because I'm a people pleaser and I don't want to upset my roommate. And I realized that since I've lived alone, the dishes can pile up in the sink now. And I'm like, wait a second, now comes that responsibility where nobody gives a shit what I'm doing in my free time or what I'm doing alone. But I do value discipline. I do value cleanliness and staying on top of things, but I've never had to experience the sense of self-responsibility as the catalyst to actually do those things. So it's super cool that you mentioned like your move to Kansas City just throwing you into the deep end of all of that responsibility, because what we've talked about historically is like being stuck here, and in order to earn that responsibility is like you have to set boundaries, you have to build those walls up. So it's just been so cool to hear that.
Yeah, it's funny because for me it was accepting who I was and going on my journey with therapy and my self-healing process that got me to realize what you basically just said, which is your life is your responsibility. The choices you make, it's your responsibility for your life and what you make of it. And like I went through a period of therapy where I'm like, I told my therapist, I was like, it might be easier if I just like move somewhere else so I can just it'll be easier for me to accept myself. It'll be easier for me to do all these things. I won't have all these external people that I'm so worried about what they're going to think of me and all this stuff. And I didn't need that at the end of the day. I just needed to accept what I was dealing with and take ownership of it and realize that there was no one else that was going to do this for me other than myself. It didn't matter if I was in Florida, it didn't matter if I was across the country. I would still have to deal with the problem. The problem wasn't going to go away. I just was looking for a way to make it quote unquote easier. But what ultimately when it clicked was that my life is my responsibility. There's no one here that's going to change who I am or what I'm going through. And so I think it's really cool for you, and I would encourage people that are thinking about making the move like to do it, because I haven't heard from anyone that's ever moved from their hometown, from friends and family, one bad thing. I've heard amazing things. They learn about themselves, they learn what they like to do, they learn who they are, because it forces you to what you just said, to really evaluate your life and what you're doing with your time. You're not being pulled by your old high school friends that you're friends with, maybe for some reason through association, or college friends through association, or a party, or this distant family member. Like there's so many things that can pull you and disconnect you from yourself, which it doesn't really sound like can happen when you're in a new place.
Yeah, and I think it also provides the opportunity, and this, for the record, it's not the only way to go.
Right, this was your way. My way was therapy and accepting who I was and working on myself.
Yeah, and I kind of fell into this, but I kind of realized the power of the opportunity, and there's like the decisions I would make on what I would do day to day to serve myself and ultimately become the best version of myself, which makes me happy, right? But then you attract and you build relationships with people who are relatively on the same mission as you. You get the chance to build that circle from the ground up. So now all of a sudden, it's not like a friend like, oh, like, come on, it's just a slice of pizza, or, oh, like, come on, just come out one night. All of a sudden, it's, come on, let's go hit legs, or like, let's go hit a workout. And you can kind of clearly see the difference. one makes you feel crazy for wanting to achieve what you want to achieve, right?
Mm.
Then the other builds you up, right? So just the opportunity to kind of rebuild my friend groups, and I mean, I have so many friends I love from back in Chicago too, and it's not like I wouldn't see them or anything. I saw plenty of people on my trip home, but for the immediate day-to-day life, like the people I'm surrounded by are people who have very similar values as myself. So I think, and it's cliche for a reason. Like, you are a product of who you surround yourself with. Choose wisely.
I mean, we've heard that from numerous guests.
Yeah, and you just mentioned, you said, it's funny because the normal thing to do is to spend your weekends, going out, drinking, eating pizza, whatever, eating or not caring about what you're eating, etc. And that's the weekend, and 9 to 5, 5 days a week, etc. There's this quote I continue to come back to. It's like, you can choose to be normal, or you can choose to be insanely interesting. And I want to get your reaction to that quote, but also, a person we had on talked about fuck your balance. That's like their quote. And like, in some ways, if you do want to be achieving and hitting progress and doing the things that you want to do, like, you might have to be crazy, or you might have to have some passion or obsession that creates an imbalance and an extreme for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so talk about that.
So, I mean, I'm not sure who said it, and I think it's a pretty contrarian standpoint in terms of, like, you'll get on social media and there's all these gurus like, yeah, it's all about striking a balance. This should be your 45-minute morning routine, and you should do this and journal and do an ice bath. My take on balance is, honestly, throw it out the window for periods of your life. If you want to achieve something, like if you want to be insanely interesting or achieve something that's out of the ordinary, you have to spend seasons of your life in intense imbalance, right? You have to. And that's going to mean saying no to certain things, and that's going to mean saying yes to things that maybe aren't that pleasant. And that's okay. Life may not be the most fun during that time period, but eventually you can make your way back to the middle. And that applies to everything. Fitness-wise, go hard on your diet. Go to the gym 5-6 days a week. Like, say no to eating out at all. Go so far to the unsustainable side of it, while staying, like, taking a healthy measure, of course, but go far to the imbalanced side of it. Reap the rewards of that. Then you can slowly make your way back towards the middle. Or you could just be average. That's up to you. But, I mean, I don't think you want to be average. I don't think that's a good model to set. Like, I heard this on a Chris, I'm going to butcher his last name, podcast. But the average American is overweight, likely to be divorced, and has...
Is that Williamson?
Yes, Chris Williamson.
Yeah, I've heard this one.
So the average American's overweight, likely to be divorced, and has $1,000 in the bank account. You tell me if you want to do that. I know I'm out.
That's average, right? And,
Yeah.
and you know what? You can almost draw that back to people pleasing and how toxic of a trait being a people pleaser is. It sounds good at a surface, but if I think about my experiences being and there's a difference between people pleasing and service, right? Because people pleasing, what I found myself doing is, well, if I'm hanging out with Covey, well, we're fitness, right? I'm working out, I'm eating clean, but I'm hanging out with another friend, I'm bowling and drinking, right? And, if I want to appease this person, then I'm going to the happy hour. But if I'm appeasing this other person, and what I end up doing is accomplishing nothing, because I'm so stretched out in so many different directions that it's all just offsetting each other in terms of what I'm ultimately trying to accomplish. You can't accomplish it all. Do you want to be a tank drinker and known for case races, or do you want to be the super fit guy? You can't be both, and if you are, you're probably neglecting other areas of your life, and most often yourself. And that's what I've found is, like, when I can set boundaries, when I can detach from all of the people around me, then I can stay kind of true and focused and aggressive and obsessed and extreme in one direction, and that's where progress is meant to be had. And so, like, that's just such an important way to think about, like, a reflection around people pleasing if you're catching yourself doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about when I hit my deathbed, like seriously, this is why, like, do I want to think I was average? Do I want to think that I had so much left in the tank? And for me, that's what drives me to do what I've been doing, and like continue to push myself out of my comfort zone and try new things and fail, quite frankly, because I don't want to be at the end of my life. Because I say it all the time on this podcast. You should take what old people are saying very seriously. And when you hear interviews about old people, what do you wish you would have done differently? It's always, I wish I wouldn't have regret. I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have gone for it. I wish I would have taken the risk. And it's like, I don't want to have that same answer when I'm old. And I think it can be a very powerful way to get people motivated. Mm-hmm. It's definitely motivated me. Is like, again, when it came to like myself and accepting myself, it's like, I don't want to be 80 years old and wondering what if this, what if I did this, what if I did this, and so that's what drives me. I'm sure to some extent that might be what drives some other listeners, but that for me is very telling. We're actually we're over an hour here. Time flies when you're having fun, man. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Amir, thank you so much for coming on here, for getting my arms to still feel super pumped before this. We got 3 rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
To end this off. The first one is just, what's your favorite quote or the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
When you're 20 years old, you care about what everyone thinks about you. When you're 40 years old, you stop caring what people think about you. And when you're 60, you realize that no one was really thinking about you the whole time. This life is short, right? And at the end of the day, everyone you know, 100 years, it's going to be gone. So do what you want. Help other people along the way. And don't worry about what other people...
I absolutely love that. We're like, I'm not that important. You're not that important. You're not, like, we're just one. You just do what you like. No one's thinking about you. I had this conversation the other day. Anyway, this serves another day. Second question, if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Trying to give a rapid fire response. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough
We're failing a rapid fire
Yeah,
response.
no, I'm failing totally at this.
If you give a good
Are
answer.
there a lot of options in your head?
No, not really. Probably, honestly, and this is going to sound so fanboyish, but honestly, probably Alex Hermosi.
He's a great, I love his content.
Why?
Listen to him.
I feel like there are aspects of his journey that I just like identify with, and I didn't. It's not like I've been like a very long time follower, but I kind of listened to a story. I'm like, whoa, like there are just some very striking, not striking, but there's some similarities, and obviously he's insanely successful and whatnot, but he just has such a depth of knowledge, pure genius in my opinion. But it would be a very interesting dinner.
Did you listen to the Chris Williamson episode recently with him and Hermo with the 23 things or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a really good one. People go listen to that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like.
Lastly, just what do you like to do in your free time? Hobbies?
I don't have hobbies. I do my job and I do this fitness thing and I put 100% of what I got into it.
So it's a hobby and a lifestyle.
It's a hobby, it's a lifestyle, and I don't dabble here and there. I'm putting 100% of my focus into one thing. So
that's a great answer, man. All right, well, thank you so much again for coming on here and for sharing your wisdom, being open, sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.